So I wanted to just talk just a couple minutes on the gospel, because today's gospel is one of those gospels that are so relevant to stewardship, isn't it, whenever you think about it, or at least forgiving. And the theme today in this gospel is one that if we let it go, we won't hear it for another couple years. And so I wanted to just share this with you. That widow gave all that she had, the little bit that she had. So have you ever had the opportunity to give all of the little bit that you have? Now, we're not talking about giving from your abundance. You see, like I have $10 and I give one away. That's from your abundance. But have you ever had that experience in your life where you can meet the Lord because you have given away all the little bit that you have? And that's what the widow did. So I thought of this story as I was reflecting on this reading. I thought of this story when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I can't remember exactly how old I was. My brother was almost 10 years older than I. And so it was his birthday week. And so his birthday week was coming. And this was many, many years ago. And so he had a godfather who worked in a toy store. And so I learned how to become jealous of that. And so he would always get these incredible gifts. And so I can remember us waiting for it. It was about maybe a week before his birthday actually happened. And I can remember for the gift. We never knew what it was going to be, but I understood it was going to be a really good gift. And so it came. And it came a few days before his birthday. And my brother loved model planes and model cars. And in those days, they were wrapped up in these boxes with plastic around them. And they came neatly packaged. And so the gift came, and it was a box about this big, you see. And his birthday was still 4 or 5 days away. And my mother had strict rules that you didn't open your presents until birthday day. And so I can remember him sneaking that bedroom, that we shared. And he said, "Don't tell Mom, but I'm going to open it up." And so he opened it up, and he just opened the tip of it. And sure enough, there was at least 12 beautifully placed models, not only cars, but also planes, and that was just one row of them. And we knew that a box was only maybe about that deep. So we didn't want to go any further, because we wanted to wrap it perfectly back again. And so, but we knew there was a heck of a lot more. So my brother got on the phone with his best friend, and his best friend put in his order for 2, okay? And then whenever he went to school the next day, he had all these friends he had lots and lots of friends. And so he had all these friends that were asking, they heard about his great treasure. And so, he had given away, to maybe about 15 people. He had promised them, because this is a gigantic box of models, And so, now, it so happened that his best friend that he promised 2 to, lived a little bit of a distance. And so he wasn't going to be able to come till the day after my brother's birthday. Okay, so setting that up for you. So my brother then, his birthday comes, and he gets to open the box, and we pretty much, I think, pull it off that it doesn't look like it's opened. And so he goes through it and goes, "Oh my goodness, all these wonderful, wonderful models." And so he started going through it, and I think there must have been 12 or so in the first row, and he was just really excited, and he put 2 aside for his buddy, just right off the bat. And then, how like chocolate candy or a box sometimes, if you have like 2 or 3 rows, you'll have this like insert between them. You ever see that? Well, that's how it was with these models. And so he took the whole first row of models out, and then there was this insert, and he pulled that up, and another row, another 12 models, and he was like flying high, and then he counted them all, and every one of them was accounted for, because the 2 for his buddy, and then all the other friends that he promised, and then he took them all out, and he took the inlay off of the 3rd row, and he was all excited, and it was all watercolor sets. And he went, and then we went through all the watercolor sets. He took them off, and there was another insert there. And whenever he pulled those off, another row of all watercolor sets. So here was the dilemma. See, because every one was already given away to his friends that came for the birthday party. And then he had 2 left, and they were already promised to his buddy, you see. And so after everyone left, my brother, just didn't know what to do. And my parents would tell us to do certain things, but they also try to teach us stuff. And so they would not give any opinion on what he do, you see. And they were just kind of like waiting. And I remember hearing something. I was only like 4 or 5, so I didn't pay too much attention. But I know my brother was really disappointed, and he went to bed that night, and I think he was pretty convinced that he had to give those 2 remaining ones to his friend. So he had to give away all the little bit that he had, see. And so I know he slept fitfully, because we slept in the same room. And then the next day he took them to school. Or where he was going to meet his friend. I don't know how he met his friend. I've forgotten that part. But he took them to give to his friend. And I know that was really tough for him to do that. And I can remember when he came back from school that day, my dad had a gigantic box with one of the best models that my brother had ever seen. Not only that, about a week later, his godfather called and says, "We have another whole box of models. Would you like them?" He got it back. You see, there's something that happens whenever we give away all of the little bit that we have that allows God to work in our lives like never before. And I wonder if you've ever had that opportunity. Have you ever experienced God that way in your lives? I wrote in the Priest Corner, and you can go to it if you haven't had a chance to read it, of an experience very similar to this whenever I made a private retreat that was run by a sister, a Catholic nun, who had this beautiful retreat center out in the middle of nowhere in Butler County. And so it's about birds that she had around her altar. So if you have a chance, it's in the bulletin. You may want to read that just as another story. But what happens whenever you give away all the little bit that you have? You see, we become dependent on God in a way that we never were dependent before. So what is it that you have little bit that maybe you can give away? Like, for example, maybe some of you have little bit of time. Maybe there can consciously be an effort for you to give that to someone in need and see what happens. Or maybe some of you have little patience, and someone needs that. Or like yesterday, a number of us, Daryl was one, Jim Gray was one, and Pete Sweet. We were at the convention. So every year we have a diocesan convention in the Episcopal Church. So we were all at that. And the bishop preached a wonderful sermon that got me motivated. And after the sermon was over, Daryl and I were sitting together, and I said, I told Daryl this little thing. And there's a lot of priests in the diocese, probably about 50 of them, and I know most of them. And there are 3 priests in the diocese that I never really met, but I only heard about. You sometimes hear things before you meet people, and they form different opinions in you, before you know anyone. And so this one priest who, I really should get to meet. I delayed meeting him because I had information, you see, that kept me from doing that. And so as a result, I had little interest in him. See, I had just little interest in him. And so whenever the bishop preached, he talked about whenever the shooting happened here in our synagogue, how that morning after he heard about that, he put on his collar and he went to the nearest Jewish synagogue, and he just gave a ministry of presence to the group of people who were there for a naming. And he said, what's really interesting is I just gave the little bit that I had known to give, and I got so much back in return. And so it seemed that God put in my heart at that point, you got to go and approach this priest and see if you can't have lunch with him. And so that's what I was sharing with Daryl. I was saying to Daryl, because I was saying, here's what happened to me during this sermon. I said, and this person, and I know this person or know about him. I have to go and invite him to lunch. I got to get to know this guy. And so that was my kind of like trying to give my little bit away, but I was scared. And Daryl looked at me and says, "Are you?" And I kind of like said, "I don't know." And I got elected for something kind of accidentally at the thing yesterday. So my name was announced. A little bit after I shared that with Daryl, I all of a sudden felt on my shoulder this little And I looked around and he said, "Are you religious?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "I'm," and then gave his name, "that very priest that I was thinking about." And he said, "I would love to have lunch with you." And I thought to myself, isn't that interesting? You know, like I was willing to give away that little bit, and I got this great gift. And so we're having it. So I guess that's what I would like to leave you with today, just as a message. What is it that you have little bit of that you might be having an opportunity to give away? Now why? So that you're positioned to get an incredible gift from God. Now, I hope it happens for you if you do that. I've had some experiences of that. I don't know for sure if that will, but you won't know unless you try. So, may the Lord help us to understand that the little bits we have in life are worth incredible amounts. Amen.